So welcome to our first panel of the day on the key challenges in decarbonizing hard-to-abate industry. And I'm delighted that this will be chaired by Nick Gowing, founder and director of the Unthinkable. You may know Nick as the main presenter for the BBC's international 24-hour news channel up until 2014. Before I hand over to Nick, he asked me to give a brief introduction, putting the panel discussion into a cement industry context. So 20 years ago, the cement industry recognized the need to go beyond legal requirements to reduce emissions, and 10 of the largest international players made commitments to do so. And since then, the key levers we've pulled are energy efficiency, fuel switching, and reducing the clinker factor. These have led to reductions of about 25% in specific carbon emissions since 1990. And these levers have a potential for perhaps another 25% reduction. But beyond that, we must find new ways to reduce CO2 emissions, including CCUS and zero carbon fuels such as hydrogen. And one thing that's becoming very clear is there's a lot of potential for cross-industry collaboration, for learning, holistic problem solving, building scale, and indeed the direct material supply. So that's really the context, Nick, and I will hand over to you.
Thanks, Ian, and welcome everybody, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to be going to India shortly. But what I want to do is make sure that you realize that this is for you. It's not just us, the panelists, and me chairing them. We want to hear from you. This is about your contributions as well. So please do send messages, send in your conversation ideas now, even if it's early in the session. I want to hear from you because you can drive the agenda just as much as I can. So please get those suggestions in on the chat line. Let me just put the challenge, the scale of the challenge, because those of you who are hearing Adair Turner and his very, very clear message, which is not enough is being done. And the cement industry is really one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult to abate compared to steel and elsewhere, is that you have a massive challenge. But I took the trouble to read from your World Cement Association document of October 2018, and you clearly have laid down that the enormity of the task ahead. Further innovation efforts are needed, the forefront of the fight against climate change. But above all, we could soon face aggressive moves from investors, regulators, and other stakeholders. Now that was 3 years ago, and I'm an outsider, but it seems to me that you've laid down a challenge of your own to make sure that stuff is done pretty quickly. And what we heard from Adair Turner with a very important graph is that essentially the world is moving in the right direction, but nothing like fast enough. And there's at least another 30% which has got to be done. And he made a very clear and urgent appeal to the cement industry. It is one of the hardest to abate sectors, but he said, you've got to squeeze out many reductions, as many as you can, certainly when it comes to increasing energy efficiency, the balance of cement chemistry on CCUS as well. And I'm going to emphasize what he said and what your president has just said. You must take action, and you've got to do it now. Those are Adair Turner's words, not mine. And it's got to be a clear and believable path. So I'm saying this really to say that, the gloves are off. There's an expectation. The world is moving, but not moving fast enough. And John Kerry, the special presidential envoy, is saying essentially that there's prevarication going on in your industry and many industries still about what has to be done and how. Now, let me get those questions coming in, please. Let me introduce our three guests. First of all, Nikki Grady-Smith, who's from BP. Nikki, what do you do at BP, which is relevant to cement?
Hi, Nick. Lovely to meet everybody. So I'm the Senior Vice President for our City and Corporate Integrated Solutions. And the reason why cement's important to us is twofold. One is we're a provider of energy, which is really important to your production and processes. And we also provide mobility solutions. But much more importantly, we're also a demand aggregator, and we are a purchaser of cement. So we're at both ends of the value chain.
And you take an independent view on what's happening in the cement industry, or are you pressing as well?
I think it's a really urgent requirement that we all work together and collaborate together to move to net zero as soon as possible. So I'm keen that we get into action.
And so you're pretty uncompromising as BP. You're saying to the cement industry, if you don't, then we as a customer will take our own view.
I think what we want to do is work in collaboration with our partners. And we think that by working in collaboration, that's the only way we can move the agenda forward.
All right, Maria Mendiluce, welcome, who's CEO of We Mean Business. Tell us what your relationship is with the cement industry.
Thank you. So the We Mean Business Coalition works with leading business to address climate change and to keep 1.5 alive, basically. And so we mobilize companies behind ambitious targets, such as the Science Based Targets Initiative or Business Ambition. We work with companies to activate actions that will help them achieve those targets. We work with companies on advocacy that needs to be consistent with their 1.5 targets. And lastly, we work with companies so that they are accountable to what they're doing. And in that sense, there's around 15 cement companies that have joined the SBTi, Science Based Targets Initiative. We want to see more, but I think it's pretty good that we are seeing already 15 that are committing in a pathway that is aligned with the Paris Agreement.
And how would you describe your relationship with the cement industry?
Well, lately I have a very close relationship with the cement industry. I've been speaking a lot to the cement industry because I think that the cement industry is waking up to the fact that many of the players are going quite fast and they need, as you said before, accelerated action. And we're seeing that some are doing, others are watching. And as they see that some of the leading players are going faster, like we will hear from Mahendra, they see, okay, well, if those players are going faster, we can go faster, right? So we're here as a challenging, we're challenging the industry to go faster. Yeah.
Thanks, Maria. Well, look, let's go to India. And Mahendra, welcome. Mahendra Singh, welcome. You are Managing Director and CEO of Dalmia Cement. You're actually in Rajasthan between meetings at the moment, but we're getting a very good signal from the back of your car. So feel you're contributing as if you're in a studio. So, and it's nice to see you. But let me tell you what Ian said right at the beginning of today when he was opening the conference. He said Dalmia is making excellent progress on these many issues. What's your view as to how fast the cement industry is moving and whether you recognize that actually much more has to be done much more quickly?
Thank you. First, I would like to say that I belong to a cement sector which is possible to abate. Second, I would say that we have shown the path. We have shown the path not in 20 or 2019, but in 2018, when no other manufacturing company was thinking of net zero. At that time, we announced our commitment and our target that by 2040, we would be carbon negative. Then we identified different 4 levers that how cement company and particularly the Dalmia cement that can prove it right. And you'll be very happy, like what Mr. Nick, you were saying, that what do you expect from cement companies or cement sector? The same is happening at Dalmia Cement. And you all would be happy to know that we have one of the lowest carbon footprint in global cement sector. As well, we have one of the most profitability also in the company. And that goes well with our philosophy of clean and green is profitable and sustainable. And in fact, I would say that our relationship with We Mean Business, the climate group, the CDP, and few oil and gas companies, that is helping us to achieve and converting our dream into reality. So my point is that if you talk of various sectors, I think now the cement sector is coming in forefront, and all of you would also be very happy to know that on 14th of this October, the GCCA, Global Cement and Concrete Association, members, they have come out with a concrete roadmap of making concrete, net zero concrete by 2050. So like what Maria has said, that many cement companies are progressing ahead. We are very happy to say that yes, we have been the front runner. And my desire is, and I'll request Mr. Ian also, that whenever he now describes cement sector, he should describe it as a possible to abate sector, because possibility creates possibility. Hardness creates hardness. Thank you.
Well, look, let me put to you, and I'm going to paraphrase what Adair Turner said, and he put up an important, very simple graphic, which said essentially things are moving in the right direction, but nothing like fast enough, not just in the cement business, but in many other businesses. And let me put to you, Mahendra, from the technical point of view, before we open up the discussion more broadly, can you do things much faster? Because essentially we're going to breach 1.5 degrees and probably 2.7 degrees. And there's a new report out from the United Nations only today. In other words, there's no point talking about 2050 because by that stage, the damage will have been done. It's got to be done by 2028, 29, 30. There's got to be a much more intensive effort. And there's no point sitting on the laurels, particularly in the cement industry. What's your view on that?
I would say we can move faster, but at the same time, whatever commitments we have made, whatever progress we have made, if my company's example is taken by everyone, then from cement sector point of view, we will not allow the temperature to go to even 1.5 degree. It can stop at 1 point or 1.1. That is one. Second, now what can be achieved? So the roadblocks, I would say, in regard to decarbonization, particularly when I talk from developing country point of view or developing countries, the cement company point of view, I would say one need is the green finance, the international carbon market, that is one. And second, support maybe from oil and gas company or few other green climate fund to experiment on carbon capture and utilization. I think one of the most important topic which we all should consider is how to convert this waste CO2 into a raw material, so that we bring down the consumption of fossil fuel. The whole motive for us to give a roadmap to cement sector and other industry is that we should now develop CCU technology in a practical and a bigger way. Asian Development Bank has already examined our proposal, and it has been found as technologically and economically viable. So now maybe to you, Mr. Nick, I will request We Mean Business and other organizations to come forward, support Dalmia Cement to implement and showcase that whatever we dream, that can be brought into the reality.
All right, Maria and Nikki, I'll come to you in a moment, but I just want to check in a company which Ian says is doing excellent progress on this, that essentially, and I'm going to repeat what Adair Turner said, it's about squeezing out as many reductions as you can by increasing energy efficiency, by increasing the balance of cement chemistry, and as he said, by CCUS as well, to take action. And the technology, though, for moving from calcium carbonate to calcium oxide, et cetera, do you believe that this can be progressed at a much faster rate, even whether or not there is money and whether there are loans, Mahendra, but it can be done, can it? You can see this as a possibility. I think we lost you.
Yes. So if you are asking me, I would say tomorrow, if finance is made available to us, day after tomorrow, we can implement this. So I'm not just talking of CCU. This is one way of doing it. Second, in what way we can replace fossil fuel 100% by green fuel. And when I say green fuel, it is the industrial waste, it is a sustainable biomass, it is municipal waste. So there are 4 levers on account of which the cement can be made net zero. And in fact, 5 days back only, when I was talking in TED platform and countdown, I said my cement will not be emitting any gram of CO2 from 2040.
From 2040, all right.
Yes,
that's very important to hear.
So we are a decade ahead of the Paris Climate Agreement, and if support what you are asking to others to give me, even I can do it before 2040 also.
All right, good. Well, look, I've focused on you, Mahendra, because I'm not sure how long the signal will stay with us. So I wanted to get maximum value out of you. And so, Maria and Nikki, thank you for your patience. What's your response when you hear what Mahendra is saying, working for Dalmia, one of the largest cement manufacturers, but when you see the reality that you're working with a lot of other companies? Nikki first.
Thanks, Nick. So I think Mahendra picked up on a couple of key points. One is, partnerships is going to be critical. We're working with large leading companies like Cemex, and we're collaborating together on solutions to move the agenda forward. I think secondly, he also spoke about some technology, so CCUS, for example, and BP's leading in net zero Teesside to get a CCUS project up and running, where we hope to decarbonize the heavy industries in the whole of that Teesside region by 2030. So I think there are technologies there.
England.
That is correct, Nick. Yeah, that is.
I just wonder for those abroad.
So we're working together, and I think it's those partnerships, working with other organizations, working with local governments to make sure we've got the right policies in place, and then working with financial institutions to make sure the investments there that's going to be critical moving forward.
Is money important in all of this? Because you just heard Mahendra say, if I get the money tomorrow, I can start on it the day after. I think that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but is money a significant constraint in all of this or not?
So I think it's really interesting question. What you're seeing is more and more financial institutions are coming to the party moving forward. So HSBC recently announced that they're willing to invest, I think it was $1 trillion in green energies moving forward. So I think the investment is starting to occur. You've got big, large corporates like the Amazons, the Microsofts of this world, Delta Airlines, also putting out big funds. And really, it's about pulling all the pieces of the jigsaw together. And I keep overemphasizing this word collaboration and partnership, but it's about bringing us all together, different market sectors, to systematically change a system that's been in place for, quite frankly, 100 years.
But the time, well, I think it's 200 years we heard earlier, but we don't have 200 years. We probably have 200 months.
We don't.
Or 200 weeks. In other words, if you look at the numbers and what we're going to hear in Glasgow in a couple of weeks, the numbers are really quite scary. But can I ask both you and Maria the same question? And I put that point from the 2018 WCA document. If we don't take action, quote, we could soon face more aggressive moves from investors, regulators, and other stakeholders. Is that a looming sort of Damocles over the cement business at the moment? First of all, Nikki, and then Maria.
So I think investors are being more and more active in all hard to abate industries, not just cement. And I know at BP, we certainly took into account the view of our investors, society, and our staff in making our decisions to change our strategy last year. So I do think there is growing pressure from a number of different stakeholders to move our agendas forward.
Maria.
Well, I think the industry has evolved quite a lot in their thinking. I engaged with them quite a lot before Paris, and they were no way near where they are today. I think the industry is quite conscious that they need to go fast. There is pressures from investors, but many companies as well that have to reduce their Scope 3 emissions, and an important part of them are these hard to abate sectors, and cement is one of them. So we're going to see an increased demand for low carbon products as well from this sector. And also what we're seeing is that some of the leading companies are going ahead. And so if Mahendra can do it, why the other ones cannot? And so everybody's watching you.
Yes.
And is saying, come on. I mean, and it's not only Mahendra, it's Cemex, it's LafargeHolcim, in Heidelberg Cement, they're quite at the forefront. And say, we're going to reduce emissions by 40% by 2030. And they have analyzed all the plans and all the changes they're going to do to get there, right? So I think the rest of the industry, should be worried, because if they don't pick up this train, then there's going to be quite a distance with these leading companies.
So Maria, what's your challenge? Just one moment, Mahendra. Well, what's your challenge to the industry, Maria? Then, if you say Mahendra can do it at Dalmia, why aren't others doing it? What's your judgment as to why that is happening? You can say that, given you where you are at We Mean Business.
Well, I don't think the industry has felt the pressure that they're feeling today. And I think sometimes the industry, stays behind the government and say, well, the government needs to go faster. But these companies operate in global markets, right? And there are many governments that are going faster, are getting net zero targets, having emissions by 2030. So I think, it's been slow 200 years with the same technology, right? But there is so much innovation, because the moment you put incentives in executive pay, and if you bring those down into the company, then these people are really smart in the companies. They know there are plenty of very talented engineers that can find solutions to reduce the amount of emissions in the activities they do. So it's just about putting the right incentives and targets in place.
Now, we've got 25 minutes. Mahendra, just one moment, please. We've got 25 minutes to run. So if you do have comments and you're watching and you want to urgently say something, please send me a message and I'll make sure that I include it. Mahendra, you've now got out of the car. You put your thumbs up when Maria was saying what she did, particularly referencing other competitor organizations and why they're not doing what you're doing. What's your view on this?
Mr. Nick, in our organization, we try to visualize the future. One, second, we work for the larger purpose. And our vision also says that we have to create pride in all stakeholders. Now, the point is that we have been able to take proactive action, understanding fully well that in 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years, the carbon tax would come in, the carbon pricing would be there. And in that case, we have to make our company future-proof. And at the same time, what we have found is that the more actions we take on sustainability, the more action we take on using waste material, the more action we take on using renewable energy, we are able to bring down the cost. So it's a win-win situation. And now, when we are becoming successful in using CCU technology, in which when we are able to convert waste CO2 into the wealth, then again, my company would be competitively profitable. So the point is that we are looking at profitability and sustainability together. And this will be surely helping not only me, but the other organizations also. And that's why you would find that in 2 years' time, more and more cement companies, more and more steel companies, they will come forward to offer them that, yes, we are for it. And the last request would be that how green finance, how green grants, how international market can come into the picture, so that the companies of the developing countries who might not be having support of innovation fund of the various European governments or US government, they can implement those projects. And I'm sure I'll seek support from Maria also, how to approach it, what to do it.
All right, well, Maria, maybe you can offer some...
Yes, and last,
maybe Maria, you can offer some support, because you did say that a lot of companies are not feeling the pressure. But I can't emphasize too strongly as an outsider to the business, time is not on your side, and you're producing 7% of carbon. And I'd like to just underscore something that Adair Turner said. Left to themselves and without forceful government policy, we will get reductions, but nothing like what is needed. So Maria and Nikki first, what's your view about how the industry can self-regulate, self-improve, or whether it really needs governments to take an upper hand to back the kind of policies you are trying at BP, for example, to encourage the cement industry to move on?
I think there's two key points here, Nick. One is the cement industry, it would be great for them to put some self-regulation in place. So take, for example, responsible steel. You know, they've set and established some standards and some certification protocols for environmentally friendly and ethically produced steel. So that gives customers confidence in those circumstances to purchase. So I think there's some self-regulation that can be put in place. But I do also think the role of government and policymakers is equally important. What they can do is they can encourage production methods to change. They can also encourage customers to demand new low carbon solutions moving forward as well. So I think a mixture is required to make the change, but I would encourage the cement industry itself to take some action.
Because we heard from the president in his pre-recorded message, Ian, that the Cement Association has got to show, and I'm quoting him here, must show social responsibility. So I'll ask you just to pick up on where you think the WCA is taking this. But Maria, again, this issue of government intervention, and obviously there are different governments with different political complexions around the world, with different priorities and so on, and some are being quite resistant on taking action, as we know from the kind of work that Alok Sharma is having to do in advance of COP26. What's your view about the importance of government pressure in order to push those companies you've just mentioned over the line?
Well, I think it's very simple. At the moment that the cement industry was under the carbon pricing in Europe, lots of innovations have suddenly appeared, right? So I think any country that is looking at what we have seen in Europe can see that actually introducing a carbon pricing can bring benefits to the industry. I would recommend any industry, cement companies, to also have an internal carbon pricing, because carbon pricing will be coming sooner rather than later. And then there is another point, is that the investors, and I know this, we're talking about governments, but investors are looking at which are the companies that have the most potential to progress. And there's kind of a race amongst the investor community to pick those companies and to understand which are the companies that have more potential, because they're committing to do better, right? And so there is also an opportunity to attract the investors by having a clear plan that is solid and backed by science, but also that is that fosters innovations and that has very clear targets and is brought down into the company through incentive schemes.
All right, we have no questions yet, so you've got 20 minutes if you want to put some points here. But Ian, can I just come back to you about that issue of what your president said about we must show social responsibility? And let me just underscore that by saying, you know, from your document of 3 years ago, we need further innovation. Standards and building codes have to be adapted to trigger a faster deployment, and also longer term carbon risk management is needed. How would you describe the progress that you're able to oversee at the WCA on this and bringing, as we just heard, bringing cement companies together?
I think if I just step back a second from that, Nick, I think there are two mechanisms that can drive change. One, as has been mentioned, is government regulation and carbon pricing. And I think Maria is right. It's clear that that is driving some change in Europe in particular now. And then the other is customer demand. And we're beginning to see in developed countries that customers, a small proportion of customers, are asking for low or zero carbon concrete. This is both private companies and some government institutions. So I think those are the mechanisms that will cause us to leap forward. Now, in terms of technological development, there are a lot of very encouraging technologies, but all of them at a pretty early stage, or all of the most interesting ones at a pretty early stage. And I think it's those levers on the government side and the customer side that will propel those technologies forward. You know, there are technologies in, perhaps I don't get into the detail now, but there are technologies, a lot of them focused on concrete, which could turn concrete from being this major emitter to a major sink. So I think on technology, there is progress being made, but it's still sort of pre-commercialization.
Obviously, there are issues of the technology and the science, which still works at its own pace. But what about adaptation and adoption of this when it comes in? Because I'm getting an impression that there's kind of a rather leisurely approach as opposed to an imperative.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we can't move away from is that companies are set up to make profits. And for the cement industry, a lot of the things that both improve profits, or let's talk about costs, both reduce costs and reduce carbon footprint, have been done. And that the things that need to be done now will increase costs. So there is this question of how do you do this in a competitive way? And
but that's not unique to cement. That's not unique to cement.
But cement has a uniquely high carbon emission per dollar of revenue. And that's why it's so much more difficult to get companies to move proactively ahead of regulations or customer demands. So that's why I go back to that, what I said originally, the key drivers here are government regulation, particularly carbon pricing, but not only carbon pricing. There are other things, as you mentioned earlier in that report from 2018, we pointed out the need for changes in standards. So there are product standards that exist today that limit the use of some of the new and innovative solutions. Now those are changing, but that's a pretty slow process too. So there is a drag in the system there, sorry.
All right, no, I'm sorry, there's a bit of, Mahendra, I'm just going to come to you in one moment, but I want to just ask Nikki, because when we had a pre-discussion a couple of weeks ago, Nikki, I have my notes here, and you indicated that really our partners are desperately wanting to do something, but struggling to know how. And I'm just wondering if there's a circle we can square here somewhere, both for you and for Maria, if there's an awareness of what has to be done, even if there's an impact on profits in the shorter term. Can you unlock, is there a key to unlock the door here, which in your view at BP can be adopted somehow?
So Nick, I think there is a solution here. And, you know, you've got over 3,000 corporations in the world have come out with net zero targets over recent years, 700 cities. So I think, you know, the will to do something is there. And you're right, it's the how. And often it's a really challenging situation. Now, I'm going to use a different industry as an example. I'm going to reflect on the UK again. So a few years ago, EV adoption was really low. And, you know, Ford were unwilling to invest in EVs. Customers were unwilling to buy them because they were concerned about infrastructure. And in theory, BP was unwilling to put the infrastructure in place. What we actually did was we chose to buy an organization in 2018 to put that electrification infrastructure in place in the UK. So some could say we took a leading role, but we didn't do it by ourselves because we worked in collaboration with government entities, with the car manufacturers. We started talking to industry bodies, and this is why the collaboration point is so important. And I think us all coming together to work on these problems helps move what can seem to many an intractable problem forward. So I think there are ways forward.
But I think I've heard Bernard Looney, your new chief executive, and also Bob before him say, we're in a time of transition. We've got to work out how much we're prepared to invest. But now you're moving in the right direction. But that wasn't necessarily guaranteed maybe 18 months ago, or there was nervousness within BP. I'm just picking up your own analysis there of your own company. So it is about taking that risk, is it, in your view, Nikki?
I think, you know, if you look at business, any business, there are challenges around making decisions, you know, investments in new technologies that can't be proven, you know, without policies in place, there is always an element of risk, commercial risk that is taken. And we chose in the example that I shared with you to make that choice, and it proved to be the right choice to make. But we did that speaking to others and working with others. And that's where the partnership element comes in. And that's why for us working with people like CEMEX, working with the GCCA and the Mission Possible team at the World Economic Forum is really important. Being part of this panel is really important so that we're all pulling together and transitioning through what is going to be a really difficult and challenging time for lots of hard to abate sectors.
Well, we're not hearing from anyone out there. I hope they're all convinced by the argument and they're going to be desperately working out how to invest very quickly now. But let me pick up that point as well. And Mahendra, I'll come to you in a moment. Maria, because what we heard from Lord Adair Turner as well is that there will be an inflection point eventually, an inflection point. And that has not yet arrived in the cement business, unlike in other businesses. Can you see that inflection point being brought forward quite significantly in ways which will not just encourage, but impose on the business a new kind of cost basis, a new kind of economic basis for doing business? Because actually the cement manufacturers will see that there's more money to be made by producing the cement in a different way.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think the task that Ian has ahead is quite challenging, because I think the industry needs to think that there are 4 levers of change. Is what the industry can do, what the demand is asking, what the investors are asking, and what regulators are asking. If the industry can get their act together instead of opposing to that change, actually figuring out how those pieces can help them decarbonize faster, then I think that they would do that successfully. Let me put an example. There is an initiative that is called the Concrete Zero Initiative, launched by one of our partners, the Climate Group, and it's grouping companies that want to buy zero emissions concrete. Okay, well, I think the industry needs to engage with these buyer clubs in order, to together, as Nikki was saying, collaborate in finding solutions. And yeah, I think if the industry doesn't move fast, there are also alternative materials for construction, right?
Sure.
And so it's not only pressure. Then you have the leaders that are saying it can be done. So Mahendra. Then you have alternatives still and others that are saying we can do it. So listen, I think it is an existential crisis for this sector at the moment, because either you react or others are going to go faster than you. Yeah.
Yes. I was going to say we would love to join you for your sweet lime in the shadow of the tree in Rajasthan as you discuss this. But I hope what you heard Maria and Nikki say is the need for cooperation. Can you, as a major cement producer, envisage actually cooperating much more closely with your competitors?
First, I would like to talk about the key driver, and I would say the key driver for any corporate citizen would be its own strategy, its own human touch. It's a concern about the future generation. And like Nick, what you just said, that the change of guard at BP has changed the strategy. The way Nikki has thought about taking the risk, I think she has moved towards more cleaner solution. So I would say the corporates and particularly the CEOs, they have to think for the future generation as a human being, not just the CEO. That is one. Secondly, they will all have to collaborate and cooperate. I know that at least with 20 organizations, we are associated globally just to get the knowledge, just to share the actions, and then to act on it. And thirdly, I would say, we don't consider in these matters other cement companies as competitors. We are considering them as collaborators, as a partner, so that we can find out the clean technologies for our grandchildren. So that's the main philosophy which we are practicing. And in fact, when I would be in Glasgow in next for 12 days, I'm going to talk at various forums that how collaboration is one supporting us and how it will be supporting cement sector per se. So, you're on mute, please. You're on mute, please. Yes, Nick.
In collaborating with your competitors, do you lose a commercial edge at all or not?
Many times we just forget commercial edge, but we just consider that are we trying to take care of all stakeholders, and particularly when we look about the dangers which IPCC report has highlighted, we'll have to collaborate together. And I would say the role which Mr. Ian is playing in World Cement Association with the members, he is trying to combine the people and making the people talk about what sort of climate risk is there, how we have to save the business also and save the humanity also. So unfortunately, what's happening, people are not considering, corporates are not considering the cost of inaction. We are just considering the cost of action. But if we consider the cost of inaction on account of either loss of human values, loss of economic activities, then every action at any cost, whether you remove CO2 at $20 or $500, it's all worthwhile. So this is how a hard call corporates have to take, nations have to take.
All right, well, look, we've got 5 minutes to run and no one out there wants to challenge. Maybe I'm asking all the right questions, but what I'd like to do is ask each of you to bring together the kind of points you've been making, because Maria, you just used the word existential, an existential threat, challenge, whichever word you want to use. In other words, a significant challenge for cement producers in this new environment. So can I ask each of you to lay down a kind of challenge for this two-day conference? So Ian, you can take it forward and say, well, in the opening panel, we heard this, because I think that my impression is a bit of cage rattling is going to have to be done to move the industry forward. Maria.
Well, I think, to meet the 1.5, which is our aspiration, we need to have emissions by 2030. So what I challenge is
2030, 2030.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have emissions in 8. This is the decisive decade, and so this is the hardest decade. But on the other hand, the easy solutions can be deployed now. So we know that it's a stock problem, climate change, and we keep adding emissions, and then we're not going to have a budget. So I say, get your act together and see how you can move up, because I know that some companies can reduce emissions by 40% by 2030, and I push you to try to go higher, closer to 50%. And I'm saying this to every industry, because this is what you have to do in the next decade, not.
And Maria, just to be clear, does that have cost implications and affect the bottom line in making those reductions?
Listen, I think there is a lot of energy efficiency and technology improvements that actually can have benefits. Also, there is the benefit of attracting investors and reduce cost of capital if they see that the company is in the right trajectory. And finally, there are companies that are out there looking to buy these low carbon products that could be the clients for those products. So I think the industry knows. I don't know them because you will know, but I'm sure you will figure out a way to reduce that cost, because that's what you know how to do as an industry.
All right. Well, that's it. That's important, that actually improvements are not a cost. They're actually potentially a benefit, which raises a lot of interesting issues about the purpose of business and stakeholders and shareholders. Nikki, let me just, there are a couple of questions or points coming in. Let me tell you, Mahendra, that there are several questions about collaboration. So I was pushing you a couple of minutes ago, but the cooperation is needed and collaboration is needed. This from Natasha Sekulic. How do you see collaboration? How active can collaboration be? Should there be more responsibility? I'm just giving you a sense here. So Nikki, picking up on those points, where do you think the challenge is? Not in 20 years, but maybe even, can I put it to you, 20 months? Because so much has to be embedded in order for procurement and change of process in order to see the benefits several years down the track.
I think this is really a leadership challenge. So as leaders, we've got to be bold. We've got to lean in and take those first steps. We've got to be open to those partnerships and collaboration. This transition is complex and no one can do it alone. I think we have to be transparent, sharing our relevant emissions data so we can measure the impact and so that customers can trust us. And I think that we need to be willing to listen. So we've got to hear the challenges that some of the customers have and that peers are facing so that we can jointly develop solutions to move forward.
Do you think they're not listening then to what the customers are saying? And some, as we've heard, a minority already creating a conditionality?
Look, I think that's a really interesting question. Customers to me have been my lifeblood in my career. And I think you've always got to listen to them, and not what they say the first time, but the second time, the third time, the fourth time. So you should never stop listening. So I don't think that people haven't been listening. I think that we need to work together and continue to listen to our customers to understand what their needs are.
Mahendra, last question to you. The way forward, we've got a couple of minutes, but I just put to you what Philippe Lavèche Dubois has just written about why does it take so long to adapt worldwide an easy to implement standard like LC3?
Yes, it does take time to finalize the standard because the houses are constructed, buildings are constructed for decades and decades. So if you don't do the right test for the right period, then scientifically, technically, you will not be able to guarantee that the house which you built with LC3 will last for 20 years or 30 years. And, it has the danger of human lives. And that's why let it take its own time. But at the same time, let us not just concentrate on LC3, which can just move the needle 1% here and there. Important is that whatever, say, cement standards which are available, like Portland Pozzolana cement, like Portland slag cement, let that be used in a bigger way. And you'll be surprised that the OPC, which is the normal cement, if it has 800 kg per ton of cement as emission, the low carbon cement which we manufacture as Portland Pozzolana cement or Portland slag cement, that just emits 500 or 300 kgs. So few solutions are already available. So people have to move towards that. And then secondly, like what earlier Maria has said, that if you start now taking into account
the internal carbon pricing, which we are doing, then that will also help the organization to take up bit high risk project also. And third, again, I would say, let people concentrate on all stakeholders, not only on one shareholder.
All right. Well, Mahendra, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. May I take the lead, please?
Sadly, we've run out of time. So thank you very much indeed to you,
you,
Mahendra. We're very envious of where you are in Rajasthan, and it's wonderful to be able to see such good quality sound and vision from places I remember where I couldn't even get a telephone call a few years ago. So it's wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us, Nikki and Maria. Ian, final word to you. Do you think we've laid down enough challenges for you to take forward in your couple of days here? You're on mute,
Nick,
like me.
Yeah, thank you. Nick, thank you very much for pulling out the insights in this panel. Cooperation and inter-industry cooperation is one of the themes, and I think you've teased out some of the key challenges. So thank you very much, and thank you to Nikki and Maria and Mahendra for participating in the panel with you.
Tremendous. Well, thank you all very much indeed. And I look forward, if you choose to invite me back in a year's time to the conference next year, to hear that there's been fantastic progress and everything's moving at a fantastic speed.
Excellent. We look forward to that too, Nick.
All righty. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.